Good morning. I am Divakar Upadhyay, and I'm going to read the beginning paragraphs of this novel, The Scarlet Letter by Hawthorne. So the purpose of reading is to prepare myself to supervise a student who has been assigned under me to write her research paper. And I want to prepare myself by reading this novel. So the primary purpose is to prepare myself to supervise my student by better understanding the novel. I'm not reading this novel for pleasure. I'm reading this novel for academic purpose, for understanding almost everything. So as I open the first chapter, let me read the title, The Custom House. At my first reading, I did not understand what a custom house was, so I used the Bing search and just asked about what a custom house was in Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel, The Scarlet Letter. And I get a brief explanation that it is a governmental building where custom officers collect taxes on imported goods. And I found that the narrator works there. And then I wondered if Nathaniel Hawthorne ever worked in a custom house as a tax collector. I was just curious. Okay, let me read now. It is a little remarkable that though disinclined to talk over much of myself and my affairs at the fireside and to my personal friends, an autobiographical impulse should twice in my life have taken possession of me in addressing the public. What draws my attention in this opening sentence of the novel is the M dash and the subordinate clause that the narrator introduces in the main clause. So the main clause is, it is a little remarkable that an autobiographical impulse should twice in my life have taken possession of me in addressing the public. And the subordinate clause is, though disinclined to talk over much of myself and my affairs at the fireside and to my personal friends. Now, the novelist could have written two separate simple sentences, right? That could have made it comparatively easier to understand. But I find that the writing style of this novelist is remarkable. And I wonder why the novelist chooses to write, let's say, complex sentence by inserting a subordinate clause. So what Nathaniel Hawthorne does, I see, is that he inserts multiple ideas in a single sentence by bringing subordinate clauses. And as you can see, I have highlighted on the screen, there are abundant of M dashes. That means in almost every sentence, Hawthorne inserts a subordinate clause. He inserts another idea, a subordinate idea in the main idea. So the narrator says that he normally is not interested in talking too much about personal affairs with his close friends, personal friends, but whenever he speaks to the public, he inclines to talk more about himself. And as a reader, I wonder why the narrator is like this, why he is interested in talking more personal things when he is talking to public, and why he is not interested in talking personal things to people around fireside or personal friends. We realize in real life, we talk more personal things to our personal friends, and we talk more personal things to people who are close to us. But unlike that, this narrator's character is remarkable because he does not want to talk about personal things to his personal friends and close friends. Rather, he becomes uh, more autobiographical when he talks to public. Another remarkable thing, I see the use of a phrase. For example, he says that uh, an autobiographical impulse should twice in my life have taken possession of. So here is a phrase that is to take possession of something. So, okay, I commented on the first sentence saying that the M dash introduces a subordinate clause that inserts an additional idea and additional information about the narrator. That is, he says that he is not interested in talking over much about himself and his affairs to his friends, but whenever he speaks to public, he tends to talk more about personal things. Let me move to second sentence. The first time was 3 or 4 years since when I favored the reader inexcusably and for no earthly reason that either the indulgent reader or the intrusive author could imagine, with a description of my way of life in the deep quietude of an old man's, or maybe mancy. I'm not sure about the exact pronunciation of this term. So again, you see in the second sentence also, the writer introduces a subordinate clause. For example, the main clause is the first time was 3 or 4 years since when I favored the reader with a description of my way of life in the deep quietude of an old man sea. And the subordinate clause that has been added and separated with the M dashes is uh, inexcusably and for no earthly reason that either the indulgent reader or the intuitive author could imagine. Now, at this point, as I encounter the second subordinate clause, an interest grows in me as a reader. I want to study in what way different writers use, creative writers use subordinate clauses or M dashes particular. I want to understand, explore. I want to do a research on how writers use M dashes as a device to achieve the kind of effect they want to achieve through the writing style. I want to know if M dash and M dash and subordinate clauses play any role, or what role do they play in literary style, and how do writers exploit or use these devices in creative writing? So again, I see that he inserts an idea. The idea is that he talks about an indulgent reader and an intrusive author. I do not understand what the narrator means by an indulgent reader, and I also do not understand what the narrator means by an intrusive author. I have I have slight idea. I have slight idea about uh, I have slight idea about in being intrusive. If you are intrusive, you intervene. And I understand indulgent reader. If you're indulgent, you're too much involved in something. But I do not clearly know what the narrator means by the two terms, the indulgent reader and the intrusive author. And I don't know how I can understand more about it. So let me once again read the main clause. The first time was 3 or 4 years since, when I favored the reader with a description of my way of life in the deep quietude of an old man's sea. Now we understand that 3 or 4 years before, this narrator had written a description about his life in the deep quietude of an old man's sea. What draws my attention is the expression, the deep quietude of an old man's sea. Uh, I, 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 I feel like this narrator likes solitude. I'm not sure, but why was he living in that deep quietude of an old man's sea? I didn't understand what an old man's sea was, and I did a Bing search and found that an old man's sea is a historic house in Concord, Massachusetts. This is a real building, and this is interesting. When I find that this is a work of fiction novel, and now here in a work of fiction, there is a factual detail. An old manse is a historic house in Concord, Massachusetts, and this house was built in 1770 for the Patriot minister William Emerson. Uh, and I found that from internal research, I found that Nathaniel Hawthorne lived there for a time with his wife Sophia Peabody. That's interesting. And now, as I see that Nathaniel Hawthorne is bringing or alluding, let's say, to a fact from his real life. Now, the question that comes to my mind is there any connection between this narrator and the author, Nathaniel Hawthorne? Is this narrator is the author impersonating himself as the narrator, or is the author coming in the novel through this narrator? Now, I feel like I could use the literary theory of new historicism to explore this aspect, because under new historicist study, what we do is we study about the context of a production of a text, and we see how the surrounding, the environment, the social realities shape the production of a text. Okay, then uh, okay, so once again, let me focus on the subordinate clause. Inexcusably and for no earthly reason that either the indulgent reader or the intuitive author could imagine. Uh, I favored the reader with a description of my way of life in deep quietude of an old Bansi. So he is trying to say that he gave an autobiographical description of his life at the old Mansi, and this was so autobiographical that even an indulgent reader or intuitive author cannot imagine. Let me move to the next sentence. Before I move to next sentence, I'll again focus on the use of the M dashes and the introduction of the uh, subordinate clauses. And I again realized that by using M dashes and introducing subordinate clauses, the novelist makes the text quite complex. And this draws my attention to the style of this novel. And maybe I could write a term paper, or maybe I could write a research paper on focusing on Nathaniel Hawthorne's style in this novel. Let's move ahead. And now, because beyond my deserts, I was happy enough to find a listener or two on the former occasion. I again seize the public by button and talk of my 3 years experience in a custom house. What draws my attention in this, let's say the third sentence, I guess, is the use of and. Let me just check in my dictionary and just quickly find out what is and. Is it a noun or conjunction or something like that? Let me quickly check. I'm just consulting a dictionary. So, uh, just a minute. Yes. And is used to connect words or parts of sentences. Also in addition, it means any addition to. Second meaning is added to plus 5 and 5 makes 10. Third meaning is then. Fourth meaning is go, come, try, stay, used before a verb. Fifth meaning is used to introduce a comment or a question. Sixth meaning is as a result. Seventh meaning is used between repeated words. Eighth meaning is used between repeated words to show that there are important differences between things or people. Now, what is interesting and draws my attention is how the novelist uses and to begin a sentence. Normally, we do not see and being used at the beginning of a sentence, but it is sometimes used. Now, I want to do a research and understand what difference does using and at the beginning of the sentence makes in terms of style of writing. I want to know how we can explain this feature grammatically. Let me read the sentence. And now, because beyond my deserts, look, this expression beyond my deserts draws my attention. At first reading, I could not understand what beyond my deserts means, and I did Bing search again, and uh, I found that beyond my deserts means beyond what I deserved. And I find that most of his expressions are like this, difficult to understand. Maybe I lack command of language. Because beyond my deserts, I was happy enough to find a listener. He is being modest. I see that the narrator is being too modest. He says that he does not deserve to find a listener or two. He does not deserve listeners, because maybe he's trying to say that he's not a good writer or good narrator. And now, because beyond my deserts, I was happy enough to find a listener or two on the former occasion, 3 years before, when he was writing about the old man. See, I again see the public by the button. Here is another again. I don't know if it is a phrase or idiom to seize public by the button. I used internet and I could not find the meaning. And I've been trying to understand the meaning of the phrase or idiom to seize the public by the button. I don't know. This surprises me. So as I comment, I do realize that Hawthorne uses a number of such expressions which are not usual. I again see the public by the button and talk of my 3 years experience in a custom house. Now I understand that this novel must probably in this novel must probably the narrator is going to describe his 3 years experience in the custom house. So I see that the custom house is used as a literary device to frame the story. Now, my attention is drawn towards how Nathaniel Hawthorne uses the custom house as a literary device to frame his story, and how novelists, writers use different devices to frame their stories. That can be another topic for writing a term paper or even a research paper. I see now I'm drawn to this idea of focusing on how Nathaniel Hawthorne uses the custom house as a literary device, as a technique to frame his story, and how he develops his story. But I understand that the narrator says that he is going to tell about his 3 years experience in a custom house. Let me read. Before I read further, again, I'll focus on the use of M dashes and the introduction of the subordinate clauses and the complication of ideas. I wonder why Hawthorne does this and what effect it has on his style. The example of the famous PP clerk of this parish was never more faithfully followed. Now, I wonder why he uses opening inverted comma and closing inverted comma and puts this in commas. PP, clerk of this parish, PP, all capital, C, capital in clerk, P, capital in parish. Now, I did a Bing search and I wanted to know what is PP, clerk of this parish, what is it referred to, and I found that PP clerk of this parish refers to a character in D.H. Lawrence's, no, Thomas Stern Lawrence, I guess, not D.H. Uh, Thomas Stern Lawrence's novel Tristram Shandy. The phrase clerk of this parish was used in England to refer to a parish clerk who was responsible for keeping records and performing how this custom house like the clerk of a parish. Now I have a question here, as you can see, as I was reading, because as I'm recording this is the second reading I'm doing. While making the first reading, I write a question here. How was this custom house like the clerk of a parish? And as I read that clerk at the parish keeps a record, I remember Bible where uh, Adam was given the responsibility by God of keeping a record of the Eden garden. I read somewhere that God assigned Adam with a register with a booklet and asked Adam to take care of the garden and just keep a note of the garden. And I don't know if this has anything to do with this thing. But what draws my attention is allusion. This allusion to uh, Lawrence's novel Tristram Shandy, and Tristram Shandy is known, famous be as the first experimental novel. I remember reading how Lawrence was acidically criticized for writing this kind of novel, which violated many norms of the time, and how Lawrence was declared to have gone mad, how this novel was banned. And I wonder why Nathaniel Hawthorne is bringing a line from Lawrence's novel, particularly Tristram Shandy. Uh, is there something in this novel that was banned? Now, it persuades me to imagine a lot of things, and I happen to guess about the story which I haven't read. Is this novel, The Scarlet Letter, going to be like Tristram Shandy, a problematic story? I don't know. But what draws my attention is two things. One, this allusion to Lawrence's novel, about the allusion to P.P. Clark of this parish, this sentence. And second, the idea of intertextuality. Now, I see that this text draws on another text. The Scarlet Letter draws on another text. So is it possible that I can write a term paper uh, focusing on intertextuality in this novel? I don't know. I'm just reading the first paragraph. I need to read maybe a couple of chapters for that. But because I'm reading this minutely as a researcher, and the purpose of this reading is to explore the novel so minutely that I can raise questions which may guide me, which may help me to do some sort of research on this text. So let me read ahead. Uh, the example of the famous P.P. Clerk of this parish was never more faithfully followed. Okay. So he says that at the custom house, at the custom house, people followed the example of P.P. Clerk of this parish. And now I become more curious to know about this P.P. Clerk of this parish, because the narrator is saying that life at the custom house was like life in the parish. And uh, okay, I have a comment here that I got from Bing Search. It says it is used here to suggest that the narrator is like a parish clerk recording and commenting on the events of his time. Okay, I did a Bing search, and the Microsoft Edge Bing search told me that the narrator is like a parish clerk recording and commenting on the events of his time. This commentary by Bing sounds plausible to me, because what this narrator is doing in this opening paragraph, he is recounting the events of his time when he spent 3 years at the um, uh, custom house. Okay, let me read ahead. The truth seems to be, however, the truth about what? Maybe the truth about the custom house. The truth about the life at custom house. The truth seems to be, why does he use this the expression seem? Why does he not say is? The truth seems to be, I taught uh, critical stylistics for a couple of years, and in one chapter, maybe modality, I guess, I forgot. In one chapter, uh, Leslie Jeffries argues that a writer not only says something, while saying something, the writer also inadvertently reveals his or her attitude. And we come to know about the writer's attitude, uh, tone. So the word seem is remarkable to me. And if I find time, I would like to go back to Leslie Jeffries' book, Critical Stylistics, particularly chapter, I guess, chapter, I forgot the chapter, and we'll like to read that chapter again and come back here and focus on the use of seams and how it reveals the speaker's attitude, narrator's attitude or viewpoint. The truth seems to be, however, that when he casts his leaves forth upon the wind. Now again a difficult expression, to cast your leaves upon the wind. Now I wonder if this is a phrase or idiom, to cast one's leaves upon the wind. In my first reading, I was blank. I didn't understand anything, and I had to gain a big search to understand what this expression might mean. And here is the information I got. This expression is used to describe an author who publishes his work without knowing who will read it or how it will be received. It suggests that the author is taking a risk by putting his work out into the world, but that he is also hopeful that it will find an audience. This is what I got from the Bing search. Now, another thing that draws my attention is the use of the concessive clause, however. This is a transitional marker, and because I have some idea about writing and reading argument, now I feel like this narrator is making some argument here, and I want to focus on the argument being made. Maybe I can write a term paper on uh, uh, argument in this novel or in this chapter. I don't know, but I'm just curious. I'm generating ideas. The truth seems to be, however, that when he casts his leaves forth upon the wind, the author addresses not the many who will fling aside his volume or never take it up, but the few who will understand him better than most of his schoolmates or life mates. Now, at this point, what draws my attention is how tactful the narrator is being. The narrator is being very tactful. The narrator is very tactfully trying to woo the reader. Look, he says that only a few of the readers will understand it better than, or his readers will understand it better than his schoolmates or life mates. Do you see, this narrator is giving more value to the reader than his fireside friends or personal friends or schoolmates or life mates. He's saying that the reader is more valuable, the audience is more valuable than people around the fireside or my personal friends or schoolmates or life mates. And this is a tactic the writer or the narrator is using to win the favor of the reader, I guess. I don't know. And I would like to focus more on these kind of tactics that the writer brings in the writing. Some authors indeed do far more than this and indulge themselves in such confidential depths of revelation as could fittingly be addressed only and exclusively to the one heart and mind of perfect sympathy. Now we have a semicolon there. We use a semicolon to bring two independent ideas together in a single sentence, and this is remarkable. I would like to focus on how Nathaniel Hawthorne uses punctuation as a device of style. Some authors indeed do far more than this and indulge themselves in such confidential depths of revelation as could fittingly be addressed only and exclusively to the one heart and mind of perfect sympathy, as if the printed book thrown at large on the wide world were certain to find out the divided segment of the writer's own nature and complete his circle of existence by bringing him into communion with it. Oh God, I I almost had a short breath finishing this sentence. Oh God, what a long sentence Hawthorne writes. And now by the time I'm at this sentence, this is a periodic sentence. Oh God, like a jerry. I almost ran out of my breath reading this sentence. Let me read again this sentence. Some authors indeed do far more than this and indulge themselves in such confidential depths of revelation as could fittingly be addressed only and exclusively to the one heart and mind of perfect sympathy. And if the printed book thrown at large on the wide world were certain to find out the divided segment of the writer's own nature and complete his circle of existence by bringing him into communion with it. Oh God. Maybe it took about more than 20-30 seconds. What a long sentence in the opening paragraph. I felt dizzy. I had not paid attention to this long sentence in my first reading. And because in the second reading, I'm recording and doing a kind of monologue. I'm doing a kind of monologue to understand better the novel. I came to it came to my attention of this long sentence, and I now do realize that Nathaniel Hawthorne is using a very difficult style. So I feel like I can do some research on his style, particularly his sentence structure. His sentence structure, I see that lots of M dashes are there, subordinate clauses are inserted, and that brings multiple ideas. Why is Nathaniel Hawthorne uh, uh, inserting or bringing to so many ideas? Why does he not use simple sentences like Ernest Hemingway does? If you compare Ernest Hemingway's novel writing style with Hawthorne's, you will see a big difference. Hemingway's sentences are never periodic like this. They are never complex. They're very simple. Hawthorne's sentences are so difficult. This is a very complex sentence. I want to read it once again, slowly this time. Some authors pause, indeed pause, do far more than this, pause and indulge themselves in such confidential depths of revelation as could fittingly be addressed in such as could fittingly be addressed only and exclusively to the one heart and mind of perfect sympathy, now semicolon, as if, once again, first there is as and if, no, as if the printed book thrown at large on the wide world were certain to find out the divided segment of the writer's own nature. Now, the expression as if has a particular meaning, and I want to consult a glossary or dictionary, and I want to understand the connotations of as if it has any, and other meanings of as if, and complete his circle of existence by bringing him into communion with it. Now, I'm not clear about what this pronoun it refers to. I, 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 I have two guesses. Maybe it refers to the divided segment of the author, or maybe it refers to the reader. I don't know. Uh, okay, let me read ahead. It is scarcely decorous, however. This is the second time Hawthorne uses however. And I'm paying attention to all these argument markers. We call them argument markers or concessive. Uh, they introduce concessive clauses. How it is scarcely decorous. It is scarcely decorous, not decorous. However, to speak all, even where we speak impersonally. So, do you see all through these lines? The narrator is talking about how should an author write, and here he says that it is not appropriate to speak everything to your reader, even if you are speaking impersonally. Now, the narrator makes clear his viewpoint about authorship by saying that an author should not reveal almost everything, should not speak almost everything to his reader, even if he or she is being impersonal. But as thoughts are frozen, now I do not understand how thoughts can be frozen. This is somewhat poetic to me. Thoughts being frozen. I can imagine this imagery in my mind. Thoughts being frozen. Maybe he is trying to say that difficult to reveal them, maybe difficult to think. Now as I do this auto talk, on my recording, I come to understand that frozen thoughts means difficulty in thinking, maybe. But as thoughts are frozen means as thoughts are difficult to be discovered, as thoughts are difficult to be analyzed, as thoughts are difficult to be expressed, but as thoughts are frozen, I still wonder this imagery of ice, this imagery, this metaphor of ice to talk about the thoughts. How can thoughts be like ice, cold, frozen? But as thoughts are frozen and utterance benumbed, benumbed means to be deprived of physical sensation. Now I don't know why is he saying this. Above, he talked about being autobiographical. In the previous lines, he talked about being an author being autobiographical. And now he talks about thoughts being frozen and utterance benumbed. Unless the speaker stand in some true relation with his audience, and I wonder what this true relation is. What is this narrator trying to say, trying to mean by true relation with his audience? What is the speaker's true relation with his audience? I don't know. I don't understand. And I want to understand it. I don't know how. It may be pardonable to imagine that a friend, a kind and uh, apprehensive means anxious or fearful, though not the closest friend, is listening to our talk. What does he say that a friend can listen to a writer's talk? Not close friend, but kind and apprehensive friend can listen to our talk. And see, do you see another remarkable thing? Hawthorne uses a number of semicolons. And now I want to explore how creative writers or writers use semicolon in style. I think I need to do a good research and study on how creative writers exploit punctuation to convey their meanings or what they want to say, or how punctuation is used to create literary effect. Though not the closest friend is listening to our talk, and then a native reserve being thought. Again, above we have the imagery metaphor of the ice frozen thoughts. Now we have the imagery of native reserve. Reserve is a wildlife sanctuary. A native reserve being thawed means being melted. If something thaws, it melts. A native reserve. Now I can connect this expression of native reserve being melt with that expression thoughts being frozen and utterance being benumbed. And then a native reserve being thawed by this genial consciousness, the genial consciousness, the friendly or cheerful consciousness of the friend who is listening to you. I realize the difficulty of his writing. We may prate. This is not an usual word we get in reading. We may prate, we may gossip or chat. We may prate of the circumstances that lie around us, being when we write, and even of ourselves, but still keep the inmost me behind its veil. Now, the narrator gives a clear verdict about how much autobiographical an author can be, should be, ought to be. And he says that we can gossip about our circumstances as author. uh, we can talk about uh, uh, ourselves also, but even when we talk about our circumstances and ourselves, we should not reveal our innermost personality. We should not reveal the inmost me in us. We should hide it behind veil. This is the narrator's viewpoint about uh, an author being autobiographical. And I wonder, why does he think so? Is this Nathaniel Hawthorne's view? I still have this question. What is the connection between this narrator and Hawthorne, and the connection between fact and fiction? The narrator here is a work of fiction, and Hawthorne is a fact, the author. And I want to study how the fact, Hawthorne, comes in the fiction, the narrator. Okay, so uh, still keep the inmost me behind its veil. To this extent and within these limits, an author methinks, see this poetic use of or archaic use of expression. Methinks is used in poetry and in archaic style. So I wonder what register this is. We say, I think, why does he write like this? Why does Nathaniel Hawthorne use archaic expressions? Does it have anything to do with creating the setting of the novel? Does Nathaniel Hawthorne use these expressions to create a mood and atmosphere of ancientness? I mean, is the writer creating the atmosphere of being this story being too old, centuries old? I wonder what is the background, the backdrop. I wonder what is the backdrop for this story. I haven't read any commentaries or anything on this novel. I'm approaching firsthand. I decided not to read any secondary material because I thought that will tarnish and influence my understanding. So the narrator opines or argues that even if an author is being autobiographical to his public, he can talk about circumstances, he can talk about himself, but he should not reveal his innermost layer of the personality, and he should keep it behind the veil. To this extent and within these limits, an author, methinks archaic word, may be autobiographical without violating either the reader's rights or his own. So the question that this narrator is answering in this opening paragraph is, now I frame a question: to what limit or to what extent, let me frame again, to what extent can an author be autobiographical in his writing without violating either the reader's rights or his own rights? I repeat the question. The question that Nathaniel Hawthorne answers in this opening paragraph, or the question that the narrator of this novel answers in the opening paragraph, is, to what extent can an author be autobiographical without violating either the reader's rights and or his own rights? And the answer that the narrator gives in this paragraph is that an author can be autobiographical to his readers and reveal about his circumstances and about himself, but an author should keep the inmost me behind the veil. An author should never reveal the innermost layer of his personality or personal identity. The author should not reveal everything to his audience. This is the viewpoint the narrator has about how much an author can be autobiographical. I'm tired. As you can see my screen, I'll take you back once again. You can see the notes I've made. I was reading. I just asked the question, what is the purpose of my reading this text? I wrote the purpose. Then I wrote what I know about Hawthorne before I come to this reading this novel. I didn't know much about the novel, but I had heard about this story by one of my friends who taught this novel in his course. Then I checked the word meanings. I did Bing search, and then as you can see, I have gone quite minutely. I've even studied what that is, what though is. They are conjunctions. I paid attention to the punctuation marks being used. There are a number of pauses, a number of em dashes, a number of semicolons, and the use of punctuation marks is quite remarkable from the viewpoint of style of writing. And the idea in the opening paragraph is the idea of an author being autobiographical to his audience. And this is the question, this is the issue, that this is the problem the narrator is talking about. And then the narrator also tells clearly that he is going to talk about his previous experience in a custom house in this story. And I see that the custom house is used as a framing device in this novel. And I want to do some research and further study to understand what is a framing device in a story, what are other framing devices that writers might use. And as you can see how much work I've done in understanding this single paragraph. And I recorded this uh, just to understand my own reading process. And I recorded this because I feel that such materials can be useful to students, anyone who is really interested in such close, detailed, dedicated reading of literary text. I spent maybe 1 hour reading a single paragraph and discussing, and this was my second reading I did. Definitely, when I made the second reading, I understood this paragraph better than the first reading. So I'll stop my recording here and I'll make another video where I will talk about the second paragraph. And I hope if anybody is watching this, this helps you to understand how we should read any literary text if we want to write a term paper, or we want to write research paper, or if we want to do research on the text. Uh, I was reading minutely, doing analysis, though I understand that my reading is not good enough. If I come to the paragraph third time, I'm pretty sure I will come across many other revelations which I didn't understand in my second reading. The more I read the same paragraph, the better I will understand, the more ideas I will have. That's why if we are reading a piece of literature, we should read it multiple times. There is no limit to how many times we should read. Okay, so I will pause my recording. Once again, I say that I prepared this recording to document my own reading process. I prepared this recording to uh, understand how I read, how I understand, what difficulties I face. And I believe that such recording may be quite helpful to other people if they want to understand how other people read and understand a text. And particularly this video might be quite useful to students who I often find in my university have no idea about how to write a term paper. And I feel that students do not have an idea about how to write a term paper because they do not read the text as an academic reader. If you read a text as an academic reader, you will have better ideas about writing a term paper or doing a research. Uh, I will again say that I was not able to explore the text enough. There are a lot of things in this paragraph which a good reader, a skilled reader, a knowledgeable reader who has a better grasp of literary elements, tools, techniques will find out, but I could not do. Thank you for watching my video. And if you like such content, please do subscribe my video and watch again. Thank you.